So after doing a bit of math, some very high mentally taxing math, I realized it will take me around the next 3 years to finish reading this if I just read it, one chapter a month. So after my SATs tomorrow and the rest of my finals next week, and my local anime convention the week after that, I am going to just fucking finish these. I mean, I'm going to try. I'm going to actually try to get these all done this summer. Because I would not like to be doing this once a month for the next 3 years of my life. My lizard is staring at me weird now.
Like, like really weirdly. What do you want?
Demon awoke, groaning as he lifted himself out of the uncomfortable couch in the middle of his pod. He checked his watch and saw it was 8:55. Ah, crap. He quickly activated his stim, collected his new armor and weapons, sprinted off to class, stopping by his dorm to grab his stuff, making it to Professor Goodwich's class about 10 minutes late, having to put his new items in the weapons locker, and slipping in cloak while two students fought in the arena. He sat down next to John and scared him half to death, having to cover his mouth to stop him from crying out in shock. "Shh, it's me." "How did you do that?" John whispered back, a slight sense of urgency in his voice. "Cloaking module. Turns you invisible to camera systems and near invisible to the naked eye." Near invisible? Demon activated his cloak again, and John seemed to look all over for him. "Look for a slight shimmer as I move," Demon instructed, slightly shifting in his seat. As he did, John's eyes moved so that he was looking in the general direction of his face. "Don't worry, you still can't see me. It takes weeks of training just to be able to see the telltale signs of cloaking. Easiest thing to do is to nail the guy before they even have the chance to do it." Demon deactivated his cloak. They both resumed watching the match. It was between two guys, both roughly the same height. One was wielding some sort of laser sword with a pistol in his offhand. The other had a collapsed sniper rifle on his back and was using metal epoche to somehow block the laser weapon. For the first mention wore a black trench coat, much like Demon, and had long, feminine hair. The other wore a mask that resembled a skull and donned a cloak that covered his almost wiry frame. Fight went on for some time, though with the skull mask looking like he would win, but with encouraging shouts with three girls in the audience, probably his team members, he managed to pull through and take down the opponent's aura to red, his being literally a pixel from falling into the same category. Miss Goodwich called the match, and they both walked off the stage. She then walked into the middle of the arena and looked directly at Demon. "Mr. Demon, I do believe you were late to class." "Yeah, late night." "Well, no matter what happened, you should have been here on time." "Will do." "Yes, you will. And also, you will be in the next match." She turned to the screen and Demon's photo turned up, the other spinner already in motion. As it stopped, it just so happened to stop on a particular blonde. "Yang Zheolong and Demon, would you please make your way and collect your gear? Your match will begin shortly. Oh, and Demon, no gravity tricks, okay?" Demon nodded and began heading for the weapons locker. He made it there and took off his gear in one of the changing rooms, changing into his new armor. As he did, he heard Team RWBY talking to Yang. "Just go easy on him, okay? He had a hard night," spoke RWBY. "I will. I'm not going to kill him or anything." "We were the reason he didn't have a birthday," Blake said, being slightly pessimistic. "Don't you mean it was Ruby's fault? She literally spent a third of my credit card allowance to buy all that. A third? How rich? How are you that rich? Questioned Yang, confused as to how she could just brush off buying that much, as if she was buying new shoes. Demon didn't hear the next part, but he got the general idea. Wife scowling a bit, and Yang just answered her own question. He ignored what they said next and focused on putting on his gear. He managed to put his armor on by himself, but he felt something was a bit off. He took off his rectangular pauldron and painted his mother's emblem on the side, using a blowtorch he had in his locker. Burning off the paint to style it, he nodded in approval and took off his helmet. He looked in the visor and reminisced of all the times he had taken this into battle. He took a long moment to compile himself and pulled on his new helmet. The screen side booted up, and a message came up in the center of the screen, blocking his vision. Loading. 10%. 24%. 38%. He waited for it to load, and when it did, it showed everything he would normally see in his helmet. There were a few distinct changes, such as the aura gauge at the top, and even an armor monitor that showed how intact it was, showing 100% efficiency right now. He grabbed his new Odachi chain gun weapon and maglocked it onto his back, putting his wingman into its holster as well. He packed all of his normal gear inside the weapons locker, tucking the photo of his mother into one of his ammo pouches. He walked back into the arena. As he was walking in, he pulled out his Odachi, trying a few practice swings. Sure, he couldn't fight with a gun, but the closest thing he had seen to a sword was hand-to-hand combat with a knife. He shook his head, vowing to learn to fight with it later and put it back in its sheath. He walked into the arena, Yang standing at the other end, but the second he walked into the light, everything stopped. Yang stood still and stared at him intently, especially at the symbol on his shoulder, and hints of fire began sprouting from her hair. The rest of the Team RWBY had open eyes and looks that could be described as almost worry. Miss Goodbush's face instantly dropped and her eyes were filled with shock. Before he could even ask, Yang screamed as loud as she could and turned into her full Super Saiyan mode. Miss Goodwitch quickly pulled up her wand and held it in the air, obviously struggling to contain the blonde. The rest of RWBY had just turned to demon and screamed for him to run, jumping into the arena to help contain Yang. Without even bothering to wait, he jumped up into the stands and began sprinting through the school. She screamed. He had no question that Yang wouldn't hesitate to kill him if she could catch up, judging by the mood she was in when he left. He sprinted into the courtyard and saw that a bullhead was just above, about to leave the landing pads. He desperately tried to get a signal of the bullhead, but no avail as he saw the engines flaring. He activated his stims and went full speed for the craft. He was about 10 meters away when he flew off and left him stranded on the landing pads. He turned around and heard explosions coming from the classrooms. He had just enough time to see a blurry gold thing coming for him. Knowing he would never survive the fall of his normal gear, he looked over the side of the floating city, down to the forest below, hundreds of kilometers from where he stood. He cursed in every language he knew and jumped off the edge, throwing a few more insults, just in case. He flew through the air at hundreds of kilometers an hour, being pulled to the ground by the stupid and useless force that was gravity. He flew through the air at terminal velocity. He had time to look back at the floating island, and to his chagrin, he saw a blurry gold thing streaming down after him. Crap, can't it go any faster? He streamlined himself and dropped even faster to the ground. At the last second, he twisted midair and slammed into the ground with his fist. As he did so, he honestly felt no negative effects, rather than a small fraction of his aura going down and his gauntlet being smashed. Oh, come on. As he thought, a small line of text appeared in the bottom left of the screen, initializing repair nanobots. As he watched his gauntlet seemed to fix itself, as tiny gray haze passed over the affected areas. He didn't have any more time to think as he heard the sound that resembled a mortar coming down. He looked up to see Yang streaking through the sky. Bloody hell, when does she ever give up? He activated his stim again and began sprinting off into the forest. He pulled out his wingman and shot any Grimm that hesitated to get too near. He sprinted full bore toward the next 5 minutes and only heard the faint sounds of shotgun shells following him. He threw the idea of blasting his way through and activated his cloak module in his armor. He sprinted for another 5 minutes in another direction and set up on a tree on the side of a clearing when he thought he had lost her. His thoughts were once again shattered as Yang smashed into the ground in the middle of a clearing, her entire body engulfed in golden flames. He stayed perfectly still, hoping the cloaking held, and waited for her to leave. She stood there for a while, seeming to sniff the air a bit, and looked around the clearing. That exact moment that her eyes glanced over him, his cloak had the brilliant idea of shutting down. You have got to be. He was interrupted by Yang smashing into him with a shotgun-powered punch, and he flew for nearly a kilometer. He was flying through the air with his eyes in a haze of red. He looked up briefly and saw his aura gauge with practically a pixel left, barely perceivable, before he began the downward trajectory of his ballistic arc. He switched to his shield about a second before slamming into the first tree. He smashed right through it and cut it in half, before slamming into another tree. 5 minutes later, he finally hit a rock, stopping him in his fall. In that seconds, 3 things broke. 1, the rock. 2, the ground immediately around him. 3, Demon's back. He slammed into the rock, barely hearing the sickening crack as his bones failed to hold onto his chest. On his barest shreds of life. He was held to the rock for a few seconds by the force of the hit, before slumping to the ground, all the feeling of the lower half of his body gone. He could barely keep consciousness as he hazily saw a figure that looked like Yang sprint over and straddled his body, began to punch his legs, dull thumping making their way to his brain. He tried to stop it by feebly holding up his hands to try and fend off the blows, only for them to be slammed back into the ground by Ember Celica, breaking them as well. He just wished that he could pass out right now so his death would be quick. As he hazily saw the reality that was the world, he somehow noticed that the pain had slowly dulled. He lifted his head up with great effort, glad that his neck had not been severed from his shoulders, and saw something that shocked him a bit. Yang had stopped, well, that was what he thought, until they saw her being held in the grip of a giant Deathstalker. It was nearly twice the size of a normal one, and it currently held Yang in its pincers. She struggled for about a second before bashing the claws open with her gauntlets and smashing down onto its face. It struggled for a second before it tried to strike at her with its tail. It missed the first time, but hit the second, causing her to fly off. But she was nowhere near finished. She jumped onto the back and smashed the face of the Deathstalker again, turning it into something that resembled a slinky. She roared in triumph before hundreds more Grimm could be seen running at her through the forest. There was no way she could survive by herself. In this haze, he pulled his left gauntlet and tried to call his Titan, only to find that the device was broken. He swore a bit and looked for options. His wingman was one, but it could barely kill any of the larger Grimm, and it had a tiny magazine. His chain gun was another. The only problem that both his arms were broken. He swore a bit and looked up at his HUD. As he swept through the display, he saw one thing that piqued his interest. On the HUD, he said that his arms were dislocated, not broken. This is going to suck so much. At the last bits of effort, he rolled onto his side and pulled on his right shoulder back into place. With more pain than he could have ever experienced in his life, he reached over and pushed the other one into place. He turned and saw Yang was having a hard time battling off the Grimm. She would kill hordes of Beowulfs with one blast of Celica, but they just kept coming, and she eventually ran out of ammo, resulting in punching them to death. Then the stronger Grimm came, Alpha Beowulfs, Borbatusks, Ursai, and finally even more Deathstalkers. He knew he only had a moment before she was utterly overwhelmed. Knowing what he had to do, he reached behind his limp back and pulled out his weapon slowly. He shifted it into its chain gun form and loaded a belt. He wouldn't be able to aim properly with his eyesight now, barely being able to see anything other than blurred outlines. Propping himself up against the back of a rock and activated his stim. That's when the pain came back. When stims are active, it brings a pilot into a state of extra awareness, allowing them to see, hear, and feel and react much more sharply than normal. Something the demon did not want to happen right now. Vision instantly corrected itself, and he could see in perfect detail. But he could also feel in perfect detail. The pain of having your back and legs broken all at once came on like a freight train, and he nearly passed out, only managing to pull through because he knew he had a mission to complete. Screaming as he did, he turned his chain gun around to face the Grimm, and pulled the trigger. Bullets tore through wave after wave of Grimm. The thuds of the bullets exploding filled the clearing. The Grimm instantly changed targets and surged for Demon, trying to take out what was the biggest threat. He just swept the weapon back and forth, slowly mowing down anything that dared to step into the hail of death that was spewing forth from its maw. With every bullet, the gun recoiled directly into his chest, causing more pain to course through his veins. And after a solid minute of firing, he ran dry of ammo. But the second he had another fresh belt in, already firing the second the bullet chambered. About halfway through the belt, his ribs gave way from the firing, and they pierced into his left lung. His aim faltered for a second, allowing the Grimm to gain a few feet on him. But he just gritted his teeth and continued. The bullets tore through all the approaching Grimm, taking seconds to kill the larger ones. They were continuously stopped about 20 meters from him. The belt fed through the chain gun at blinding speed. Soon he was out again. In haste to grab another belt of ammunition, he accidentally caused the foot of his mother, uncle, and him to fall out. He lingered a bit too long on it and allowed the Grimm to gain even more ground. When he began firing again, he barely had a meter of ground to maneuver his chain gun and struggled to shake down the Grimm that were behind the walls of bodies that were slowly piling up. He could see hundreds upon hundreds of Grimm surging towards him. There was no way he could take them all out. Even if he managed to kill everything with one bullet, he was short about 1,000 rounds. He wasn't going down without a fight. Chain gun's barrel was smoking and red hot from the firing, and he swore he saw the end of it beginning to melt. Just after he managed to take down an Ursa Major with a couple of belts to the chest, the unthinkable happened. His gun jammed. He was pulling the trigger, and the stream of bullets was coming out, until they weren't. He heard the resounding click of the bolt slider hit the cartridge that had failed to clear the chamber. His heart stopped, and he couldn't believe it. He had no chance now. They would kill him in seconds. He watched as the Grimm converged on him, unhindered by the gun that less than a second ago was mowing them down. They seemed to go in slow motion as they approached, the Beowulfs making their way over the decaying corpses of their brethren to take down the human that had killed them. An Alpha Beowulf made its way to the head of the pack, and was the first to take a swing at Demon, claws arcing towards him. ready to decapitate him in one swift blow. Just before the claws reached him, time stopped. Just when they were literally a millimeter from his face. He was slightly confused, being able to think normally, even though time had stopped. And on top of that, all the pain he was experiencing went away. Before he could investigate what happened, he heard an answer reverberate through his head. She didn't deserve your help. She nearly killed you. You didn't need to give your life for her. It was the same voice he had heard a couple of days earlier, and when it didn't talk anymore, he thought it was looking for a response. So he answered his thoughts. Everyone deserves it. I have caused too much sorrow in my life. If in my last moments of life I could help someone else, then I'll take it. She was weak, useless, and should have died. But I am linked to you, and if you die, I die. So I cannot allow that. What do you mean linked? We both know what I mean by that. I am just an extension of your will made real. I am the insatiable hunger that you try to hold down. But I have been awoken, and I will gain more control. No, you will not. You will not do what happened last time, especially not here. That was when I was young, inexperienced, and I didn't know you would hate what was done. It would have happened anyway. The deaths were just dealt by our hand. Do you know how many people we killed? Yes, and they were irrelevant. They would have been killed eventually. I refuse to allow you to control again. You are mistaken. You do not have a choice. You will need me in due time, and I will not hesitate to protect us, even if it means taking everything down. Please. I will try and act a bit more like you. Currently, I'm an invader in your mind, but soon enough, you will learn to accept me, and you will find that we are not that different. No, we will never be the same. Oh, we will. I can't hold this time lapse much longer. I know you will never accept me as part of you, but I will always be here. And if you ever need to talk, just call on me, and I will answer. Demon didn't have time to question what was being said before his vision blacked out, his mind losing all semblance of thought and collapsing into unconsciousness. God damn it, why are these getting so long? Ugh. I am going to try. I'm going to try and make these relatively consistently in about 3 weeks. That'd be starting. But, I just... You guys like my what I forgot what demons like. Weird. I'm not gonna spoil it yet, but it's the voice in his head. What do you think of my voice? I don't exactly have a unique voice. It's about the most plain voice you can get, and it's very cracky. Yes, extremely cracky. Cracky to the point where my chest vibrates viciously when I talk. Also the fact that I'm just, 17, and the fact that I have a pretty bad throat cold right now, but the show must go on. So anyways, I hope you have a fantastic day.